The crystal towers of Velthara caught the light of 3 suns and scattered it across the sky, in colors that had no names in human language. The city stretched for miles, each building grown from living crystal that pulsed with soft blue and green light. This was the heart of the Velthian civilization, a species that had mastered the stars 2,000 years before humans even discovered fire. Inside the Central Medical Institute, Illyriana stood perfectly still. Her crystalline skin, normally bright with the soft glow that marked her as one of the healthiest of her kind, had dimmed to a dull gray. The news she had just received made her feel as if her own light might go out forever. Her daughter was dying. Nisara lay in the medical chamber, her small body barely visible through the protective field that surrounded her. At only 12 cycles old, she should have been full of light and energy. Instead, her crystalline skin showed dark cracks running across her arms and face. The glow that should have pulsed steadily from within her was now just a weak flicker, like a candle about to go out in the wind. "How long?" Illyriana asked. Her voice came out flat, empty of the musical tones that usually marked Velthian speech. The senior physician, Torvash, touched his chest in a gesture of deep sorrow. His own light pulsed with sadness. 3 weeks, perhaps 4. The fading plague is in its final stage. We have tried everything, matriarch. Every treatment, every gene therapy, every molecular repair sequence we know. Nothing stops it. Illyriana moved closer to the chamber. She placed her hand against the protective field, wishing she could touch her daughter's face. Nisara's eyes opened slowly, and even they had lost their shine. The little girl tried to smile, but the effort made the cracks in her face widen slightly. "Mother," Nisara whispered, "it doesn't hurt anymore." That was the worst sign. When the pain stopped, it meant the body had given up fighting. It meant the end was near. Illyriana felt something break inside her chest. She was one of the greatest genetic researchers on Velthara. She had solved diseases that had plagued her people for centuries. She had extended lifespans, improved health, and unlocked secrets of their biology that no one else had understood. But she could not save her own daughter. The fading plague had appeared 10 years ago. At first it seemed like a rare condition, affecting only 1 or 2 children. The Velthian medical community studied it with interest but not urgency. They assumed they would find a cure quickly. They were wrong. The disease spread slowly but steadily. It attacked young Velthians, usually between the ages of 10 and 15. It caused their crystalline structure to break down from the inside. The cracks would start small, barely visible. Then they would spread, growing deeper and wider until the entire body began to fall apart. The light inside would dim, then flicker, then die. And when the light died, so did the child. In 10 years, they had lost thousands of children. The brightest minds of Velthara had worked without rest to find a cure. They had mapped every gene, studied every molecule, tested every possible treatment. They had built machines that could see individual atoms. They had created computers that could process 1 billion calculations per second. They had technology that most species in the galaxy could only dream about. And none of it worked. The fading plague killed every child it touched. Not one had survived. Torvash stood beside Illyriana in silence. There was nothing more to say. They both knew the truth. Nisra would die just like all the others, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. "Leave me," Illyriana said quietly. "I want time alone with my daughter." The physician bowed and left without a word. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. Illyriana stayed by the chamber for hours. She watched her daughter sleep. She watched the cracks grow wider. She watched the light grow dimmer. And she made a decision that would change everything. She would not accept this. She would not watch her daughter die without trying everything possible, even if it meant doing something that no Velthian had done in centuries. She would ask for help. The next morning, Illyriana went to the Galactic Communication Center. The building sat at the edge of the city, away from the main towers. Most Velthians rarely used it. They preferred to keep to themselves, believing that their civilization was superior to most others in the galaxy. Why would they need help from species that were less advanced? But pride meant nothing when your child was dying. Illyriana stood before the main console and began typing. She composed a message that would be sent out across the entire galactic network, reaching every planet, every space station, every ship that was connected to the system. She explained the fading plague in detail. She described every symptom, every failed treatment, every dead end they had reached. She included all their research data, everything they had learned in 10 years of desperate study. And then she did something no Velthian of her status had ever done. She begged. She offered everything she had. Her wealth, her research, her knowledge, her status. She would give anything to anyone who could save her daughter. She would share the most guarded secrets of Velthian technology. She would owe a debt that could never be repaid. She just wanted her daughter to live. She sent the message and waited. For 2 days, nothing happened. The silence was worse than rejection. It meant that no one cared. No one thought they could help. No one wanted to try. Then on the 3rd day, she received a response. It came from a small ship at the edge of the sector. The message was short and written in simple, clear language. It said, "I think I can help. I will come." The message was signed by a human, a species that had only joined the galactic community 20 years ago, a species that most advanced civilizations considered primitive and backward, a species whose technology was laughably simple compared to Velthian achievements. Illyriana stared at the message for a long time. Part of her wanted to ignore it. What could a human possibly know that the Velthians did not? It seemed insulting that such a primitive species would even offer help. But another part of her, the part that was a mother before she was a scientist, did not care about pride or status or technological advancement. That part only cared about one thing: saving Nusara. She sent a reply accepting the offer. The human would arrive in 3 days. 3 days. Nusara might not even have that long, but it was all the hope Illyriana had left. The human ship landed 3 days later in the early morning. It was small, barely larger than a personal transport vessel. Its hull showed scratches and repairs from countless journeys. Compared to the elegant crystal ships of the Velthians, it looked like something built in someone's garage from spare parts. Illyriana stood at the landing platform with several members of the medical council. They had insisted on being present when the human arrived. Most of them thought this was a waste of time, but they could not stop Illyriana from trying. She was too respected and her grief was too raw. The ship's door opened with a hiss of air pressure. A figure stepped out into the bright light of Velthara's 3 sons. The human was young, perhaps in his early 30s by their standards. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a plain shirt with a worn jacket over it. He carried a single bag over his shoulder and a medical case in his hand. His black hair was slightly messy, as if he had been sleeping during the flight. He looked tired. This was their great hope? This exhausted young man with rumpled clothes and a bag that looked like it had seen better days? Illyriana felt her light dim with disappointment. But she pushed the feeling away. She had asked for help. Now she would accept it no matter what form it took. The human walked down the ramp and stopped a few feet away. He bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect. "My name is Dane. I'm a doctor. Thank you for letting me come." His voice was quiet and calm. He spoke Galactic Standard with a slight accent that marked him as someone who had learned the language later in life. But his words were clear and easy to understand. One of the council members, a tall Velthian named Korvex, stepped forward. His light pulsed with irritation. "You are human. Your species has barely left your home system. What makes you think you can help us when our greatest minds have failed?" Dane looked at Korvex for a moment. There was no anger in his expression, no offense taken. He simply nodded. "You're right. I'm not smarter than you. I don't have better technology. But I might see things differently. Sometimes a different view is all you need." "Ridiculous," another council member muttered. "This is an insult to our profession." Illyriana stepped forward before the argument could continue. Her light pulsed firmly, demanding silence. "Enough. I invited him here. He will have access to everything he needs. If you disagree, you may leave." The council members fell silent. They could complain, but they could not override Illyriana's authority. Not in this matter. Not when it concerned her own daughter. Illyriana turned to Dane. "Come with me. I'll take you to Nisara." They walked through the crystal corridors of the medical institute. Dane looked around with quiet interest. He did not gawk at the beauty of the architecture or stare at the advanced medical equipment they passed. He simply observed, taking everything in with calm attention. "How long have you been studying the fading plague?" Dane asked. 10 years, Illyriana replied. "We have complete genetic maps of every victim. We have tracked every molecular change. We have billions of data points." Dane nodded. "Have you found any pattern to who gets sick?" "Age is the only consistent factor. Children between 10 and 15 cycles. Beyond that, nothing. It appears random." They reached the isolation wing where Nisara lay. Illyriana placed her hand on the security panel and the door opened. The medical chamber stood in the center of the room, surrounded by monitors and equipment that hummed softly. Nusara was awake. She looked even worse than she had 3 days ago. The cracks had spread across more of her body. Her light was so dim that it was barely visible. But when she saw her mother, she tried to smile. "Mother," she whispered. "Who is this?" "This is Dain. He's a human doctor. He's come to help you." Nusara looked at Dain with curious eyes. "Are humans the ones who eat with their mouths?" Dain smiled. It was a warm, genuine expression. "Yes, we do. It's not very elegant, but it works." "That sounds funny," Nusara said. Her voice was so weak that Dain had to lean closer to hear her. "Can you really help me?" "I'm going to try," Dain said honestly. "I can't promise anything, but I will do my best." He set down his bag and approached the chamber. He studied the controls for a moment, then looked at Illyriana. "May I access your research data?" "Of course." Illyriana brought up the main medical console. "This contains everything we know about the disease. Every test, every treatment attempt, every theory we've explored." Dain sat down at the console and began reading. His eyes moved quickly across the screen, taking in information that had taken years to gather. The room fell silent except for the soft beeping of medical monitors. Hours passed. Illyriana stood nearby, watching the human work. Occasionally, he would pause and make notes in a small paper notebook he pulled from his bag. Paper. She had not seen anyone use physical paper in decades. It seemed primitive, wasteful. But she said nothing. Evening came. Dain was still reading. Illyriana brought him food and water, though she was not sure what humans needed. He thanked her and ate quickly, barely looking away from the screen. By midnight, 3 more council members had arrived to observe. They stood at the back of the room, their lights pulsing with skepticism. They whispered to each other, making comments about the humans' methods. Dain ignored them completely. He seemed lost in the data, occasionally typing commands to bring up specific files or cross-reference different studies. On the second day, he began examining Nusara directly. He asked permission to run his own tests using equipment from his medical case. The devices looked simple, almost crude compared to Velthian technology. But Illyriana agreed. Dain worked carefully and gently. He explained everything he was doing to Nusara, speaking to her like she was a person, not just a patient. He asked her how she felt, what hurt, what felt different. He listened to her answers with complete attention. The council members grew more restless. They had expected the human to fail quickly and obviously. Instead, he was taking his time, methodically working through everything. It was frustrating to watch. "This is pointless," Korvac said on the 3rd day. "He's learned nothing we don't already know. He's wasting time that the child doesn't have." Illyriana rounded on him. "Then leave."
"If you have nothing helpful to offer, get out."
Korvac's light flashed with anger, but he left. 2 other council members followed him. Only a few remained, watching with cold skepticism. On the 4th day, something changed. Dain had been studying a particular set of genetic sequences for hours. He had pulled up dozens of different files, comparing them against each other. His notebook was filled with diagrams and notes written in human script. Then he stopped. He sat back in his chair and stared at the screen for a long moment. "What is it?" Illyriana asked. She had been watching him constantly, hoping for any sign of progress. Dain turned to look at her. His expression was serious. "I need to ask you something. When did your people develop advanced gene therapy? The kind that can modify genetic code at will?" Illyriana thought for a moment. "About 300 years ago. Why?" "And the first case of fading plague appeared 10 years ago." "Yes," Dain nodded slowly. "I think I know what's causing this, but you're not going to like it." Illyriana felt her light pulse with sudden hope mixed with fear. "Tell me." "Your medical technology is too good," Dain said quietly. "It's so good that it's created a problem you don't know how to solve, because you've never had to solve it before." The room fell completely silent. Even the skeptical council members leaned forward to hear. "Explain," Illyriana demanded. Dain stood and walked to the main display screen. He brought up several images of genetic sequences. "You've been treating this like a genetic error that needs to be fixed. Like bad code in a program. But it's not that. It's an immune response. Your children's bodies are attacking themselves." One of the council members scoffed. "We know that. We've tried immune suppressants. They don't work. Because you're trying to suppress the response without understanding why it's happening, Dane replied. He looked at Illyriana. Has your species had many problems with immune disorders in your history? No, very few. Our medical technology has eliminated most such issues. Exactly, Dane said. You've been using gene therapy to fix immune problems for 300 years. You've gotten so good at it that your species has forgotten how immune systems actually work. You can reprogram them, but you don't understand them anymore. That's absurd, one of the council members said, but Illyriana was staring at the screen. Something in what Dane said felt true. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that your approach is wrong. You're trying to fix the immune system like you'd fix a machine. But immune systems aren't machines. They're living things, and sometimes when they break badly enough, you can't fix them. Then what do we do? Illyriana asked. Her voice shook. Dane met her eyes. We replace them. We completely restart your daughter's immune system from scratch. It's called bone marrow transplantation in humans. For Velthians, it would be different, but the concept is the same. The council members erupted in protest. Destroy the immune system completely? That's barbaric. The child would die from the first infection. This is madness. But Illyriana only had one question. Will it work? Dane was quiet for a moment. I don't know. We've never tried it on a Velthian. Sarah was this. But it's worked for humans. Many times. And right now it's the only idea I have. Illyriana looked at her daughter. The medical team worked through the night preparing for the procedure. Dane stood at the center of it all, directing the preparations with calm authority. The Velthian doctors moved around him with obvious reluctance. They followed his instructions, but their lights pulsed with doubt and anger. Illyriana watched from the observation window above the surgical bay. Below, her daughter lay in the medical chamber, unaware of what was about to happen. The child was too weak now to even open her eyes. Her light had faded to almost nothing. Torvash, the senior physician, stood beside Illyriana. He had stayed when the other council members left. Now he watched the preparations with a grim expression. This is unprecedented, matriarch. If the human is wrong, Nisara will die within hours. If we do nothing, she dies anyway, Illyriana replied. Her voice was steady, but inside she felt like she was falling through empty space. At least this way we try something new. New is not always better, Torvash said quietly. Sometimes the old ways fail for good reasons. Illyriana did not answer. She knew he was right to be cautious. What Dane proposed was radical, even dangerous. But watching her daughter fade away while doing nothing felt worse than any risk. Down in the surgical bay, Dane gathered the medical team around him. He looked tired. He had not slept in 2 days, but his eyes were clear and focused. I need to explain what we're going to do, he said. Not just the steps, but why we're doing it this way. Because if you don't understand, you might make a mistake that kills her. The Velthian doctors exchanged glances. One of them, a younger physician named Lyraen, stepped forward. Unlike the others, her light pulsed with curiosity rather than skepticism. We are listening. Dane brought up a holographic display showing Nisara's immune system. Red areas marked where the disease had spread. The fading plague is causing her immune system to attack her own crystalline structure. Her body thinks her own cells are foreign invaders. Every immune cell in her body is programmed wrong. We know this, another doctor said impatiently. We have tried to reprogram the immune cells. It does not work. Because you're trying to reprogram cells that are already active and attacking, Dane explained. It's like trying to stop a wildfire by convincing each flame to burn differently. You can't reason with a fire. You have to put it out and start over. Lyraen leaned closer to the display. So you want to destroy all her immune cells? Yes, completely. We make her body a blank slate. She will have no defenses. Torvash's voice came over the communication system from the observation deck. Any infection will kill her. That's why we keep her in complete isolation, Dane replied. Sterile environment, filtered air. No contact with anything that could carry disease. Humans have done this thousands of times. We know how to keep patients safe during immune system recovery. Another doctor spoke up. And then? If we destroy her immune system, how does she get a new one? We give her one, Dane said. He turned to look up at the observation window. From her mother. Illyriana's stem cells, modified and introduced into Nisara's body. They will grow into new immune cells, but these cells will be properly programmed. They won't attack her own body. The room fell silent. The doctors looked at each other, processing what Dane had said. The concept was simple, but the execution was terrifyingly complex. "This has never been done on a Velthian," one doctor said. "We have no idea if it will work." "You're right," Dane admitted. "But I've studied your biology for 4 days straight. The principles are the same as human medicine. Your cells work differently, but they still follow the same basic rules. Life is life, no matter what form it takes." Liren spoke again. Her light pulsed with a color Dane had learned meant deep thought. "You said humans have done this thousands of times, but humans are not like us. Our bodies are crystalline, yours are carbon-based. How do you know the same method will work?" Dane smiled slightly. It was not a happy smile. "I don't. But I know that your approach has failed completely. Every child who gets this disease dies. Every single one. So either we try something different, or we accept that Nisara will die like all the others." The truth of his words hung in the air like a weight. No one could argue with it. "There is another reason I think this will work," Dane continued. "Humans have been dealing with immune system problems for thousands of years. We didn't have advanced technology to fix things. We had to learn how immune systems actually function, how they grow, how they fail, how they recover. That knowledge was earned through countless deaths and failures." He paused, looking at each doctor in turn. "Your species skipped that stage. You went straight to genetic programming without understanding the biological foundation. You're incredibly advanced, but you've never had to think about immune systems the way humans have. This disease caught you unprepared, because it's a problem that can't be solved by making your technology better. It has to be solved by thinking about biology differently." Torvash's voice came over the speaker again. "You are saying we are too smart for our own good." "No," Dane replied. "I'm saying you're smart in a different way than humans are. You solve problems with technology. We solve problems with understanding. Sometimes understanding is more powerful." Another long silence. Then Liren spoke. "I believe him. This approach makes sense. It is crude and primitive, yes, but that might be exactly what we need." One by one, the other doctors nodded. They still had doubts. Their lights still pulsed with uncertainty, but they were willing to try. Dane let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. "Good, then let's begin. First phase is immune suppression. We need to destroy every immune cell in Nisara's body. I've prepared a treatment protocol based on human methods, adapted for Velthian biology. It will take 6 hours." The doctors moved to their positions. Equipment hummed to life. Monitors flickered with readouts showing Nisara's vital signs. Illyriana's hands pressed against the observation window. "Be safe, my daughter," she whispered. Dine approached Nisara's medical chamber. He placed his hand on the clear surface, looking down at the small, fragile form inside. "I'm going to help you," he said softly. "It's going to be hard and it's going to hurt. But you're strong. You can make it through this." Nisara's eyes flickered open for just a moment. She looked at Dane with those dimming eyes and somehow found the strength to whisper, "I trust you." Those 3 words hit Dane harder than anything else. This child barely knew him. She had every reason to be afraid, but she trusted him anyway. He could not let her down. "Begin phase 1, Dane said. His voice was steady and strong. "Start the immune suppression treatment." The machines activated. Medicine flowed through tubes into Nisara's body. It was poison in a way. It would kill the immune cells that were attacking her, but it would also leave her completely defenseless. Dane watched the monitors constantly. He adjusted dosages by hand, ignoring the automated systems. The Velthian doctors watched him with confusion. Their technology could calculate perfect dosages automatically. Why was the human doing it manually? Liren asked him about it during the 3rd hour. "Why do you not trust our computers? They are far more accurate than manual adjustment." "Because they calculate based on averages," Dane replied, not taking his eyes off the monitors. "They assume Nisara responds to treatment like a typical patient. But she's not typical. She's dying. Her body is already stressed beyond normal limits. I need to watch how she actually responds, not how the computer thinks she should respond." "But how can you tell?" Liren asked. "What do you see that the machines do not?" Dane pointed to one of the displays. "Her light pattern. It's fluctuating more than the computer's model predicts. That means she's struggling more than expected. So I'm reducing the dose slightly, spreading it out over a longer time. It's gentler but slower." Liren studied the display. She had looked at thousands of these readouts in her career, but she had always relied on the computer analysis. Now, watching Dane interpret the raw data directly, she saw patterns she had never noticed before. Small fluctuations, tiny variations that the automated systems smoothed out as statistical noise. "You read the patient, not just the data," she said slowly. "Yes," Dane replied. "The data tells you what is happening. The patient tells you how they feel about what is happening. Both are important." By the 6th hour, the first phase was complete. Nisara's immune system was gone. Every immune cell in her body had been destroyed. She was now more vulnerable than a newborn child. Any bacteria, any virus, any infection at all would kill her within hours. The medical bay had been converted into a complete isolation zone. The air was filtered through multiple layers of purification. Every surface had been sterilized. The doctors wore full protective suits. Nothing could reach Nisara except the medical equipment directly connected to her chamber. "Phase 1 complete," Dane announced. "Vital signs are stable. We'll wait 2 hours to ensure all immune cells are cleared, then begin Phase 2. He stepped back from the chamber and sat down heavily in a chair. Suddenly, the exhaustion hit him all at once. He had been running on determination and caffeine for days. Liren brought him water and food. "You should rest. We can monitor her for 2 hours. Exactly 1 hour later, Liren gently shook Dane awake. He opened his eyes immediately, alert despite the brief rest. "Status? Stable. All immune cells cleared. No infections detected. She is ready for Phase 2. Dane stood and stretched. His body ached from sleeping in the chair, but there was no time to worry about that. He walked to the medical chamber and studied the monitors carefully. Nisara looked worse than before. Her crystalline skin had become almost transparent. The cracks covered nearly her entire body. Her light was barely aglow, like a single ember in a dying fire, but she was alive. That was enough. "Bring Matriarch Illyriana down here," Dain said. "We need her stem cells for the transplant." Illyriana arrived within minutes. She had been waiting for this moment. Dain explained the procedure to her carefully. They would extract stem cells from her body, process them to remove any immune programming, then introduce them into Nisara. The cells would travel through her daughter's body and begin growing into new immune cells, clean cells, cells that would not attack her own body. "Will it hurt?" Illyriana asked. "The extraction, a little. Nothing you cannot handle." "I did not mean for me," Illyriana said quietly. "I meant for Nisara." Dain paused. He could have lied. He could have said it would be painless. But he respected Illyriana too much for that. "Yes, it will hurt. The new cells will multiply rapidly. Her body will react. There will be inflammation, fever, pain, but we will manage it as best we can." Illyriana nodded. "Do it. Take whatever you need from me." The extraction took an hour. Dain worked carefully, extracting cells from Illyriana's body and processing them through equipment that combined Velthian technology with human medical knowledge. The other doctors watched in fascination. They had never seen cells handled this way before. Dain treated them like living things that needed care, not just biological material to be processed. When the cells were ready, Dain loaded them into the injection system. He stood before Nisara's chamber, his hand on the activation control. This was the moment. Everything they had done led to this. If it worked, Nisara would live. If it failed, she would die, probably within hours. He looked up at the observation window. Illyriana stood there, her hand pressed against the glass. Her light pulsed with fear and hope mixed together. Dain activated the injection system. The stem cells flowed into Nisara's body through multiple channels. The monitors showed them spreading through her system, carried by her circulatory fluids. They would settle in her bone marrow and lymph nodes, the places where immune cells were born. Then they would begin to grow. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Nisara lay still in the chamber, her breathing shallow. The medical team watched the monitors constantly, looking for any sign of change. Dain did not leave her side. He watched every reading, every fluctuation, every tiny variation in her vital signs. The other doctors cycled through shifts, resting and returning. But Dain stayed. His eyes were red from exhaustion, but he refused to sleep. Liren brought him food and made him eat. She did not ask him to rest anymore. She understood now. This human had committed himself completely to saving Nisara. He would not stop until the battle was won or lost. 8 hours after the injection, the first signs appeared. Nisara's temperature began to rise. Her breathing became faster. The monitors showed increased activity in her bone marrow. "The cells are taking hold," Dane said. His voice was rough from lack of sleep, but there was energy in it now. "Her body is responding. This is good." But as the hours passed, the response grew stronger. Too strong. Nisara's temperature climbed higher. Her small body began to shake with fever. The monitors showed inflammation spreading through her system. "This is too much," Torvash said over the communication system. "Her body is rejecting the transplant. We need to stop this before it kills her." "No," Dayan said firmly. "This is normal. This is how the process works. Her body is learning to accept the new cells. It takes time. She is burning up," another doctor protested. "Look at the temperature readings. This will cause organ damage." Dayan was already preparing cooling treatments. "I see it. I'm managing it. We expected this. Human transplant patients go through the same thing. It looks terrifying, but it's part of the process." He administered the cooling treatments manually, adjusting them constantly based on Nisara's response. The Velthian doctors wanted to use the automated systems, but Dane refused. He could see things in the data that the computers missed. Small patterns that told him when to increase cooling, when to reduce it, when to let the fever burn a little longer to help the cells establish themselves. 12 hours in, Nisara's eyes opened. She looked around in confusion and pain. "Mother?" she whispered. Illyriana's voice came over the speaker immediately. "I am here, my light. I am right here. You are safe." "It hurts," Nisara whimpered. "Everything hurts." Dayan leaned close to the chamber. "I know, I'm sorry. But the pain means you are fighting. You are strong, Nisara. Keep fighting." The child looked at him with eyes full of tears. "I'm trying. But I'm so tired, I know. But you cannot rest yet. Just a little longer. Can you do that for me?" Nisara's light flickered weakly. Then, with effort that clearly cost her, she nodded. "Okay, a little longer." Dane felt something catch in his throat. This brave little girl, suffering through pain that would break most adults, was fighting with everything she had. She deserved to live. He would make sure she did. The next 24 hours were the longest of Dane's life. Nisara's condition swung wildly. Sometimes her temperature would spike dangerously high. Other times it would drop too low. Her breathing would become labored, then ease, then worsen again. Every hour brought a new crisis that had to be managed. The Velthian doctors wanted to intervene multiple times. They wanted to use their advanced systems to stabilize her forcefully, but Dane stopped them each time. He explained that this chaos was the process. The new immune system was establishing itself. They had to let it happen even though it looked dangerous. "You are gambling with her life," Korvac said. He had returned to the observation deck, unable to stay away. "If you are wrong, she dies." "If I am wrong, she dies," Dane agreed. "But if we interfere now, she definitely dies. The transplant has to complete on its own. We can only support her through it, not control it." On the second day, something changed. Nisara's vital signs began to stabilize. The wild swings became less extreme. Her temperature settled into a consistent low fever. Her breathing eased, and then impossibly her light grew slightly brighter. It was tiny, barely noticeable, but Illyriana saw it from the observation deck. "Her light," she gasped. "It's stronger." Everyone rushed to look at the monitors. The readings confirmed it. Nisara's bioluminescence had increased by 3%. It was not much, but it was more than it had been since the disease began. "The stem cells are working," Lyrian said, her voice filled with wonder. "They are producing new immune cells. Healthy ones." Dane allowed himself a small smile. "It's too early to celebrate, but yes, this is a good sign." On the third day, the improvement was undeniable. Nisara's light had grown stronger by 10%. The cracks in her skin, which had seemed permanent, showed the first signs of healing. Tiny edges of new crystal growth appeared at the fracture lines. The medical team watched in amazement. They had never seen a child recover from the fading plague. Not even a little. Most children just got worse until they died. But Nisara was actually healing. "How is this possible?" Torvash asked. He was no longer skeptical. Now he was simply trying to understand. "Her new immune system is not attacking her," Dane explained. "It is doing what an immune system should do, protecting her body, not destroying it. Now her natural healing abilities can work. Velthian bodies can repair themselves, right?" "Yes," Illyriana said from the observation deck. Her voice shook with emotion. "Our crystalline structure can regrow if given the chance. But the fading plague prevented that. The immune system kept attacking any new growth. Exactly, Diane said. Now that the attack has stopped, her body can finally heal itself. We did not cure the damage. We just removed the thing that was causing it. Her own body is doing the rest. By the fourth day, Nisara was awake more often. She could speak in full sentences. Her light was visible from across the room. The cracks were still there, but they were definitely smaller. She smiled at Dane when he came to check on her. I feel better. Am I getting well? Yes, Dane said. And this time he was sure of it. You are getting well. Nisara's light pulsed with joy. Thank you. Thank you for helping me. Dane felt tears in his eyes, but he blinked them away. You are welcome. But you did most of the work. You were the one who fought. You were the one who was strong enough to survive. The child thought about that. Then she said something that made everyone in the room stop and listen. My mother says your species is new to the galaxy, that you are still learning, but I think you already know the most important things. What things? Dane asked gently. How to be kind, Nisara said simply, and how to not give up on people. The words hung in the air. Around the medical bay, Velthian doctors who had doubted, who had been skeptical, who had thought humans were primitive and simple, all fell silent. Because a dying child had just taught them something their entire civilization had forgotten. On the fifth day, Nisara sat up in her chamber. On the 6th to 3 weeks after the transplant, Nisara walked out of the isolation chamber on her own legs. Her mother stood at the door, tears flowing freely down her crystalline face, her light pulsing with colors that meant pure joy. Behind them, the entire medical staff had gathered to witness the moment. Nisara's skin glowed with healthy light. The cracks were gone, healed completely as if they had never existed. She looked like a normal, healthy Velthian child. But she was more than that. She was the first child to ever survive the fading plague. She ran to her mother and embraced her. Illyriana held her daughter tightly, afraid that if she let go, this miracle might disappear. But Nisara was solid and real and alive. Dane stood to the side, watching quietly. He was ready to leave. His work was done. But Illyriana turned to him, still holding her daughter, and her light pulsed with a color that meant eternal gratitude. You saved her, Illyriana said. You saved my daughter when we could not. Dane shook his head. I just showed you a different way to look at the problem. You and your team did the actual work. Do not diminish what you have done, Torvash said. The senior physician stepped forward, his light steady and respectful. You have taught us something profound. We thought our technology made us wise, but wisdom is not the same as knowledge. You showed us that. Over the next few days, word of Nisara's recovery spread across Velthara. Parents of other sick children began arriving at the medical institute, begging for the same treatment. Hope, which had been dead for 10 years, suddenly blazed to life. Dane spent long hours teaching the Velthian doctors his methods. Not just the technical steps, but the philosophy behind them. How to read a patient, not just data. How to trust biological processes instead of trying to control everything. How to recognize that sometimes simple solutions work better than complex ones. Liren became his most dedicated student. She absorbed everything he taught, asking questions that showed she truly understood. You have changed how I think about medicine, she told him one evening. I always relied on technology to tell me what to do. Now I see that technology is just a tool. Understanding is the real skill. You will be a great doctor, Dane said. You have the most important quality. You want to learn. The first group of children began treatment the following week. 5 patients, all in advanced stages of the fading plague. The Velthian doctors followed Dane's protocols exactly, but under his close supervision. He watched every case carefully, teaching them how to adjust treatments based on each patient's individual response. All 5 children survived. The news exploded across the planet. The treatment worked. It was repeatable. Children who were dying could be saved. The fading plague, which had seemed like a death sentence, now had a cure. More patients came. Dozens, then hundreds. The medical institute expanded rapidly to handle them all. Dine trained more doctors, and those doctors trained others. The knowledge spread like healing light across Velthara. But with success came questions. The medical council, which had been so skeptical at the beginning, now wanted to understand how a human had succeeded where they had failed. They called a formal meeting to discuss the implications. Dine stood before the full council in their grand chamber. Every major medical authority on Velthara was present. Their lights pulsed with various colors, curiosity, respect, and in some cases residual embarrassment. Corvex, who had been the most vocal opponent at the beginning, spoke first. Dr. Dane, you have accomplished something extraordinary, but we must understand how. Not just the technical method, but the thinking behind it. Why did you see what we could not? Dane thought carefully before answering. Because humans are not as advanced as you are. We have not had thousands of years of sophisticated technology. Most of human history has been spent fighting diseases with very simple tools. We learned through trial and error, through countless failures, through watching patients suffer and sometimes die despite our best efforts. He paused, looking around the chamber.
You asked why I saw what you could not.
I think it is because you forgot. You have been using advanced genetic technology for so long that you stopped thinking about how biology actually works. You started treating bodies like machines that could be programmed. But bodies are not machines. They are living systems that grow and adapt and sometimes do unexpected things. Another council member spoke. Are you saying our advancement was a disadvantage? No, Dane said firmly. Your technology is incredible. It can do things humans can only dream about. But technology should serve understanding, not replace it. You developed tools so powerful that you stopped needing to understand the fundamentals. And when a problem appeared that could not be solved by technology alone, you had no other approach to try. Illyriana stood and addressed the council. He is right. We became arrogant. We thought our technology made us superior to younger species, but we forgot that wisdom comes from many sources. From struggle, from failure, from the simple act of paying attention to what life is trying to teach us. Torvash added his voice. I have been a physician for 60 years. I have always trusted our advanced systems to provide answers. But Dr. Dane showed me that sometimes the most important information comes not from the machines, but from watching the patient, from seeing how a child responds, how they fight, how their body tries to heal itself. This is something we had forgotten. The discussion continued for hours. The council examined every aspect of the treatment, not just to understand it technically, but to understand what it meant for their civilization. They had been humbled. A species they considered primitive had taught them something fundamental about their own biology. Finally, the senior council member spoke. His light pulsed with formal authority. Dr. Dane, on behalf of the Velthian medical community, I offer our deepest gratitude. You have saved countless children. You have given hope to families who had none, and you have taught us a lesson we desperately needed to learn. He paused, and his light shifted to a color that meant deep respect. We would like to offer you a permanent position here, head of the new Department of Integrative Medicine. We want to combine our technology with your understanding, to create a new approach that honors both advancement and wisdom. Diane was quiet for a long moment. The offer was generous. He would have status, resources, the chance to save more lives. But something in him resisted. This was not why he had come. I am honored, Dane said carefully. But I must decline. My work here is done. You do not need me anymore. You have learned what you needed to learn. Now you can teach it to others. But there is so much more you could teach us, Lyrian protested. Why would you leave? Dane smiled. Because there are other places in the galaxy where someone might need help. Other species facing problems they cannot solve alone. Other children who are dying. If I stay here comfortable and honored, I cannot help them. Illyriana understood immediately. You are not just a doctor. You are a wanderer, a helper. You go where you are needed, then move on when the need is met? Yes, Dane said simply. That is who I am. The council accepted his decision, though many were disappointed. They gave him gifts and honors, which he accepted politely. But what mattered most to Dane was not the official recognition. What mattered was the children. Before he left, Dane visited the recovery ward. It was filled with children who had been dying and were now healing. Their lights glowed bright and healthy. They played and laughed and lived. Nisara ran to him when he entered. Dr. Dane! Are you leaving? Yes, it is time for me to go. But why? We need you here. Dane knelt down to her level. No, you do not. Your doctors know how to help you now. They can save other children the way they saved you. They do not need me anymore. Nisara's light pulsed with sadness. Will we ever see you again? Maybe. The galaxy is large, but sometimes paths cross again. He touched her shoulder gently. You are going to grow up strong and healthy. You are going to do amazing things. And maybe one day you will help someone the way I helped you. I will. Nisara said with determination. I promise. Dane stood and addressed all the children in the ward. You are all miracles. You fought death and won. Remember that. Remember how strong you are. And when you grow up, use that strength to help others. The children's lights pulsed in agreement. They did not fully understand yet, but they would. Some of them would become doctors. Others would become teachers, scientists, artists. But all of them would remember the human who saved them, and the lesson he taught, that helping others is the greatest strength of all. That evening, Dane prepared his ship for departure. Illyriana came to see him off. They stood together on the landing platform as the three suns set, painting the sky in colors Earth had no names for. I do not know how to thank you properly, Illyriana said. You gave me back my daughter. You gave our entire civilization a future. Words are not enough. You do not owe me anything, Dane replied. I did what anyone should do. I helped because I could. That is what makes you remarkable, Illyriana said. You say it is simple, but it is not. Many species have the ability to help. Few have the will. Fewer still have the humility to offer help without. The news spread across the galactic network faster than anyone expected. Within days, every major civilization knew the story. A human doctor had cured a disease that the advanced Velthians could not solve. He had used simple methods and ancient knowledge. He had saved hundreds of children and asked for nothing in return. The story was told and retold on 1,000 worlds. Each telling added to the legend. Some versions were exaggerated, making Dane into a hero of impossible proportions. Other versions focused on the shame of the Velthians, how their pride had blinded them. But the core truth remained constant. Humanity had something valuable to offer the galaxy, and it was not what anyone expected. On the planet Korath, the ruling science directorate called an emergency session. The Korathi were an old species, almost as advanced as the Velthians. They had always viewed humans as newcomers who needed centuries more development before they would matter. But now they reconsidered. If the Velthians, with all their genetic mastery, needed human help, what does that say about our own potential blind spots? The chief director asked. The question hung in the chamber like a challenge. A medical director responded. It says that advancement in one area does not guarantee understanding in all areas. The humans have survived terrible plagues. They have watched billions die from diseases over their history. They learned things we never needed to learn because we developed cures too quickly. So their weakness became their strength, another director mused. Their suffering taught them lessons we never learned. The discussion continued for hours. By the end, the Korathi had made a decision. They sent a formal invitation to Earth asking for a cultural and medical exchange. They wanted human doctors to come to Korath not to be taught, but to teach, to share perspectives that the Korathi had never considered. Similar discussions happened on dozens of worlds. The Thraxi, the Mekron Collective, the unified planets of Sector 9. Each civilization looked at the Velthara story and saw themselves. How many times had they dismissed younger species as primitive? How much knowledge had they ignored because it came from a less technologically advanced source? Earth's diplomatic channels were overwhelmed with requests. Medical exchanges, research collaborations, invitations to conferences. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence now wanted to work with them. The human government struggled to respond. They did not have thousands of doctors like Dane ready to travel the galaxy. Most humans were still trying to establish their own colonies, to find their place among the stars. They could not send help to everyone who asked. But they did what they could. They established the Galactic Medical Initiative, a volunteer program for doctors and researchers who wanted to work with alien species. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of humans applied, eager to help, to learn, to be part of something larger than themselves. One of the first volunteers was a young doctor named Hannah. She had read about Diane's work and felt inspired. She wanted to do the same thing, to help species who needed it. She was assigned to the planet Thraxi, where a strange degenerative condition was affecting their elderly population. The Thraxi were insectoid beings with hard exoskeletons and compound eyes. Their technology was focused on quantum mechanics and dimensional physics, but their medical knowledge had gaps, especially in geriatric care. They simply did not think much about old age because most Thraxi died suddenly when their time came, not slowly from accumulated conditions. Hannah arrived on Thraxi with no fanfare. She was not famous like Dane. She was just a doctor who wanted to help. But she carried the same philosophy. She watched, she listened. She tried to understand the problem from the ground up instead of assuming the solution would be complex. She noticed that elderly Thraxi were not eating properly. Their food was designed for younger metabolisms. As they aged, their bodies could not process it efficiently, leading to malnutrition that looked like disease. The solution was simple: adjust the food, create special nutrition for elderly bodies. The Thraxi medical community was amazed. They had been developing complex genetic treatments to try to restore youthful metabolism. They had never considered that maybe old bodies did not need to be young again. Maybe they just needed food appropriate for their age. Stories like Hana's began appearing across the galaxy. Human doctors making simple observations that solved complex problems. Not because humans were smarter, but because they approached problems differently. They looked for the simple answer first, the biological explanation, the natural solution. Only when simple failed did they reach for complex. On Velthara, Illyriana watched these developments with pride and sadness mixed together. Pride because the lesson Dane taught was spreading. Sadness because she knew it took her daughter's near death to learn it. She had transformed the medical institute into a center for what she called integrative medicine. The goal was to combine advanced technology with biological understanding, to honor both the power of science and the wisdom of nature. Lirin had become her right hand in this work. The young Velthian doctor had fully embraced Dane's philosophy. She studied human medical history, reading about the plagues and epidemics that shaped their civilization. She learned about doctors who worked with nothing but observation and intuition. She understood now that technology should enhance understanding, not replace it. Together, Illyriana and Liraean created a training program that attracted students from across the galaxy. Young doctors from dozens of species came to Velthara to learn this new approach. They studied both advanced Velthian technology and simple human methodology. They learned to use machines and to trust their eyes, to read data and to listen to patients. One day a message arrived at the institute. It was from Dane. He had heard about the program and wanted to congratulate them. He was currently on the planet Nexus, helping with a respiratory disease that affected their amphibious population. Illyriana responded immediately. She asked him how the work was going, if he needed anything, if there was a way she could help him the way he had helped her. Dane's response was simple. The work goes well. I need nothing but time. But there is one way you can help. Keep training those doctors. Send them out into the galaxy. Teach them to help without expecting gratitude, to solve problems without demanding credit, to learn from everyone they meet. That is the real cure we need. Not just for disease, but for the arrogance that prevents species from working together. Illyriana read his words and understood. This was bigger than medicine. This was about changing how different species saw each other, about breaking down the walls of superiority and prejudice, about building a galaxy where everyone learned from everyone else. She shared Dane's message with the council. They agreed to expand the program. Velthara would become a place where species met not to compete, but to collaborate, where the old taught the young and the young challenged the old, where technology and wisdom walked hand in hand. Nisara, now fully recovered and growing strong, declared that she wanted to join the training program when she was old enough. She wanted to be like Dr. Dane, traveling the galaxy and helping others. Her mother supported this dream completely. You will make an excellent doctor, Illyriana told her daughter. You know what it is like to suffer. You understand how precious life is. Those lessons will make you compassionate, and compassion is the foundation of good medicine. Meanwhile, on Earth, the success stories kept arriving. Human doctors across the galaxy were making differences, solving problems, teaching and learning. But more importantly, they were changing how other species viewed humanity. Humans were no longer seen as primitive newcomers. They were recognized as a species with unique strengths. Their history of struggle had given them resilience. Their lack of advanced technology had forced them to understand biology deeply. Their culture of exploration and curiosity made them excellent collaborators. The Galactic Medical Initiative expanded beyond medicine. Other programs were created. Human engineers began working with alien species on practical problems. Human teachers shared educational methods. Human artists collaborated with alien cultures on shared projects. Each interaction broke down more barriers. Each collaboration built more understanding. Slowly, the galaxy was learning what Velthara had learned, that every species has value regardless of their technology level. That wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from struggle. that helping each other is not weakness, but the greatest strength any civilization can have. Back on Velthara, a memorial was built in the center of the medical institute. It was a simple crystal sculpture showing a human hand reaching out to a Velthian child. Beneath it, words were carved in both Velthian script and human languages. We are strongest when we help each other. We are wisest when we learn from each other. We are most human when we care for each other. The memorial became a gathering place. Doctors from across the galaxy would visit it, touching the crystal hand, remembering why they chose to heal others. Remembering that medicine is not just about curing disease. It is about compassion, dedication, and the simple belief that every life matters. 10 years after Dain saved Nisara, the galaxy had changed. Not completely. There were still conflicts, still prejudices, still species who thought themselves superior. But there were also thousands of collaborations that would end. 20 years had passed since a human doctor first stepped onto Veltharan soil and changed everything. The Memorial Plaza at the Medical Institute had become one of the most visited sites on the planet. Beings from dozens of species came to see the crystal sculpture of a human hand reaching toward a Velthian child, to read the inscription, to remember why they chose the path of healing. Today the plaza was crowded. A special ceremony was taking place. The Galactic Initiative for Medical Cooperation was being officially launched, and representatives from 73 different species had gathered for the occasion. Illyriana stood on the platform, her crystalline form now showing the subtle dimming that came with age. Her light still pulsed strong, but it was different now, steadier, wiser. The years had taught her things that youth could never understand. Beside her stood Nisara, now 32 cycles old, a brilliant physician in her own right. She ran the Institute's Department of Cross-Species Medicine, training doctors from across the galaxy in the methods that had saved her life. Her light glowed with the same intensity her mother's once had, full of energy and purpose. And on her other side stood Dain. He was gray-haired now, his face lined with years of travel and work. But his eyes were still sharp, still kind, still carrying that quiet determination that had saved Nisara so long ago. He had been difficult to find. The Medical Institute had sent messages to every planet, every station, every ship that might know where he was. Finally, a response came from a small colony at the edge of explored space. Dain had been there for 3 months, helping them establish their first proper hospital. When they asked him to come to Velthara for the ceremony, he had hesitated. He did not like public attention. He preferred to work quietly, to help and then move on. But Illyriana had been insistent. This was important. His presence mattered, so he came. Now he stood before thousands of gathered beings, looking uncomfortable but resolute. Illyriana touched his arm gently. You do not have to speak if you do not wish to. But they want to hear from you. They need to hear from you. Dain nodded slowly. I will try. Nisara stepped forward to address the crowd. Her voice was amplified across the plaza, reaching everyone gathered and broadcasting across the galactic network. Billions would watch this moment. 20 years ago I was dying, Nisara began. Her light pulsed with the memory of that pain. The fading plague was killing me, just as it had killed thousands of other children. My people, brilliant and advanced as we were, could not save me. We had tried everything our technology could offer. We had failed. She paused, looking out at the assembled crowd. Then a human came. Dr. Dain was young and carried simple tools. Many of our doctors thought he was wasting our time. Some were insulted that we would ask a primitive species for help. But my mother was desperate, and desperation made her humble enough to accept help from anyone who offered it. The crowd listened in complete silence. Even those who knew this story wanted to hear it from the person who had lived it. Dr. Dain did not save me with advanced technology. He saved me by understanding something we had forgotten. He saved me by remembering that bodies are not machines to be programmed, but living systems that must be understood. He saved me by being willing to try when everyone else had given up. Nisara's light brightened with emotion. But more than that, he taught us humility. He taught us that being advanced does not mean being wise. That having powerful technology does not mean having all the answers. That every species, no matter how young or old, technologically primitive or advanced, has something valuable to offer. She turned to Dain. Dr. Dain, you have spent these 20 years traveling the galaxy, helping wherever you were needed. You have saved countless lives. You have taught hundreds of doctors. You have changed how entire civilizations think about medicine and cooperation, and you have done it all quietly. asking for nothing, wanting no recognition. Dane shifted uncomfortably. He did not like being praised. But Nisara continued. Today we launched the Galactic Initiative for Medical Cooperation. This program will place human medical practitioners with research teams across the galaxy, not to teach aliens human medicine, but to offer a different perspective, to bring the wisdom that comes from struggle, the understanding that comes from having to learn the hard way, the compassion that comes from knowing what it means to be vulnerable. She gestured to the crowd. We have doctors here from 73 species. Each of you brings unique knowledge and abilities. But we ask you to remember what humanity has taught us. That collaboration is stronger than competition. That helping each other is not weakness but strength. That the greatest advances come not from working alone, but from combining our different perspectives into something none of us could achieve separately. The crowd erupted in the various expressions of approval each species used. Lights pulsed, sounds echoed, limbs waved. The plaza filled with the sound of dozens of species showing their agreement and support. When the noise died down, Nisara spoke again. We call this the Remedy Initiative. Its symbol is what you see behind me, a human hand reaching out to help an alien child stand, a reminder that we are strongest when we help each other rise. She stepped back and gestured to Dane. Now I ask Dr. Dane to say a few words, the man who started all of this. Dane walked slowly to the center of the platform. He looked out at the vast crowd and felt overwhelmed. These were leaders, scientists, doctors, representatives of civilizations that spanned the galaxy, and they were all looking at him, waiting for wisdom. He took a breath and spoke simply, the way he always did. I am not a great man, Dane said. I am just a doctor who tries to help people. 20 years ago, I came here because someone asked for help and I thought maybe I could provide it. I did not come to prove anything about humanity, or to show that we were special. I came because a child was dying and her mother was desperate. He paused, gathering his thoughts. What happened here changed the galaxy, but it did not change because I was special or because humans are superior. It changed because we all learned something important. We learned that pride makes us blind, that assumptions make us stupid, that thinking we have all the answers prevents us from finding the real ones. The crowd listened intently. Some translated his words into forms their species could understand, but the meaning came through clearly. Humans are not better than anyone else, Dane continued. We are just different. We have struggled in ways some of you have not. We have failed more times than we have succeeded. We have watched billions die from diseases and disasters that we could not prevent. That suffering taught us things. Hard things, painful things, but valuable things. He looked around at the faces, appendages, sensory organs of dozens of different species. Every species here has their own struggles, their own lessons, their own wisdom born from their own pain. Humans do not have a monopoly on understanding. We just have our particular kind of understanding, shaped by our particular history. Dane's voice grew stronger. The real lesson of what happened here is not about humans helping aliens. It is about being willing to learn from each other, about putting aside pride and prejudice and the assumption that your way is the only way, about recognizing that the species you dismiss as primitive might know something you do not, and the species you view as advanced might have forgotten something you remember. He pointed to the memorial sculpture behind him. That hand reaching out? It could be any species. It could be human, Velthian, Thraxi, Karathi, anyone. Because we all have the capacity to help. We all have knowledge to share. We all have something to teach and something to learn. The plaza was completely silent now. Even the wind seemed to have stopped blowing. This initiative you are launching today is important, Dane said. But not because it puts humans in positions to teach you. It is important because it creates opportunities for all of us to learn from each other. The human doctors going out into the galaxy will learn as much as they teach. They will come back changed, carrying knowledge from your species that will help humanity grow. He smiled slightly. That is what I have done for 20 years. I have traveled to dozens of worlds and helped where I could, but every species I helped also taught me something. The Thraxi taught me about patience. The Karathi taught me about systematic thinking. The Mecron taught me about community care. And the Velthians taught me about dedication and the courage to admit when you are wrong. Illyriana's light pulsed with emotion at those words. So yes, launch this initiative, Dane said. Send humans across the galaxy. But remember what it is really about. It is about breaking down walls, about building bridges, about creating a galaxy where we help each other not because we are the same, but because our differences make us stronger together. He stepped back from the center of the platform. That is all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening to an old doctor ramble. But the crowd did not let him retreat quietly. They erupted again, this time with even more energy. Beings who had come skeptical left believing. Beings who had come out of obligation left inspired. The ceremony continued with formal speeches from various representatives. But everyone knew that Dane's words were what mattered. Simple, honest,